The 2023 season of Formula One has arrived, and preseason testing has just reached its conclusion. Based on preseason testing and previous year's performance, these are my predictions for the 2023 Formula One season. Now, these may age like milk, so take it with a grain of salt, but anyways, some teams have made massive steps either up or down the field, and there is plenty to unpack, so let's get started.
Whoa, there's a giant lizard on the track.
Starting at the sharp end of the field, Red Bull is playing a game of spot the difference with the new RB19. It seems the engineers went with the idea of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, with only one major change. This change is the depth of their side pods, which dive down towards the diffuser significantly steeper than the previous year's car, and they're much more scalloped out on the bottom side to improve airflow to the back of the car, allowing for higher energy air to reach the rear, which improves the floor efficiency. Honda also claimed to have improved the hybrid energy harvesting for this year, while the power output saw no top-end increase. This led to a relatively problem-free and dominant testing session by the defending champions, with them near the top of the timesheets on all 3 days, and Max Verstappen putting in a massive amount of laps on day 2, additionally with supreme pace. I think they will remain the team to beat heading into the season, and there's not much new to report in terms of Red Bull.
Wait, what are these tires?
Sorry, it's a mistake.
With Binotto running off into the sunset, Ferrari might stop playing a game of the worst strategy possible and be a true championship contender this time around. The SF23 held up for numerous long testing sessions and retained a similar design to last year. Leclerc stated that the car feels faster in the straights but slower in the corners, which was Ferrari's biggest strength last year. The SF23 seemed comfortable with no major issues throughout the entire duration of testing, and Ferrari retained a much fatter side pod than Red Bull, mainly on the lower side. Carlos Sainz has said that the car feels better, and it's like an evolution of last year's, but overall pretty similar. My conclusion on Ferrari puts them fighting with Red Bull for the championship as long as they could figure out which tires to put onto the car and avoid throwing races out the window, which previously seemed to be their specialty.
Mike, no, Mike, that was so not right.
As we take a look at the silver arrows, the new Mercedes W14 hoped to improve upon what was one of the worst cars they have ever made while still retaining the no side pod design. They still remain to be the only car to do that, and they clearly won the game of livery design, returning to a black car that was continuously a pleasure to watch churn out laps. The pace seemed to be on par with where they were in the latter stages of last season, which should keep them towards the front of the field. However, a big wedge was thrown into their plans on the second day of testing when George Russell encountered a hydraulic failure that caused a red flag and probably had Toto Wolff slamming headphones into a table somewhere. This ultimately resulted in an entire day of testing gone to waste, giving the team far less data to work with over the course of the next week. Both drivers seem to be in good form, and porpoising seems to be a thing of mostly the past, partially due to the FIA raising the floor edges 15mm this year to assist with this issue. I put the silver arrows a step behind Red Bull and Ferrari, but still fighting for third with our next team.
Off the track, I think you have to leave a space. All the time you have to leave a space.
If you haven't been paying attention to testing, you're probably shocked to see this team here, but while Lance Stroll was out driving his bicycle like a Formula One car, Aston Martin seems to have shocked everyone this year and has quickly become the talk of testing. While Fernando Alonso has made some questionable career choices in the past, we might be watching Alpine come into its climax. The new AMR23 with the 41-year-old legend himself behind the wheel managed to closely trail the pace of Max Verstappen for the first 2 days of testing. Now, although testing times don't mean much, the AMR23 looked solid throughout the weekend and seemed very planted through mid-speed corners. The Aston side pod design had the deepest top inlet of them all, with their engineers doubling down on getting airflow to the rear diffuser. This car is definitely a combination of many of the other teams' ideas, but with some unique twists. And even in his 40s, Alonso showed he still has it by dragging the Alpine to second place qualifying last year and consistently scoring points while also doing everything possible to frustrate Lewis Hamilton. I believe this driver duo, paired with the much more advanced AMR23, will drag the formerly known Big Green Tractor to be challenging Mercedes, which will be reviving an intense rivalry between two of our most experienced drivers and making Aston Martin the team to watch out for this year.
Of how to pronounce
Alpine.
it's not Alpine.
With Fernando Alonso moving to Aston Martin and a vacancy at Alpine being filled by none other than
Pierre Gasly!
Alpine is now sporting two of the best young drivers and a car that managed to find itself in the sharp end of the pack last year, so they should be in a solid position. Testing saw two issues occur, both of which are slightly concerning. The first of these was porpoising, a problem that they were lucky to never suffer last year, but severely inhibited the progress of many teams. On the straights, the car repeatedly slammed into the track, throwing sparks behind it, as the downforce generated by their new floor design was fighting with the suspension. The second issue they saw was getting the wheels off, which would be cause for a nightmarish pit stop in season. Numerous times throughout testing, the Alpine mechanics struggled to wiggle the rear wheels off of the car, a cause for concern, but most likely something that they will sort out within the next week. I see them finishing around 5th place and firmly taking the role of best of the rest when it comes to a seemingly much tighter midfield this season.
Valtteri, it's James. Please abort the fastest lap attempt for the end of the lap.
James, it's Valtteri. You.
Alfa Romeo Saubers saw a quietly good testing session, going mostly under the radar until Zhou Guanyu set the fastest lap of day 2 testing. Although it was on the softest C5 tire compound, so that is something to keep in mind. Shortly after, the Alfa suffered some type of clutch issue that resulted in it being wheeled back into the garage near the end of the session. Valtteri also seemed happy with the car and expressed content with the amount of data that they managed to collect, as well as with the overall performance of the car. With Zhou likely to take a step forward this year, and Valtteri a many-time race winner, I believe the Alfa Romeo team will be firmly fighting in the mid-pack for about 6th place, and they overall had a pretty low-drama testing session with not a lot of new things going on.
I can't, it's broken! It's broken! Anti-stall!
Along with Aston Martin, McLaren was the other big discussion point of the session, with many struggles seen over the course of all 3 days. The first day saw Lando Norris miss a large amount of time due to a brake failure, which had him sitting around in the garage for a few hours. This was then followed by the continuous failure of wheel brows, which sit right on the inside of the front wheels. They seemed to be not strong enough and continuously were kind of cracking and falling off or just hanging on by a thread. The pace of the MCL 60 also seemed to be completely absent, and rookie Oscar Piastri also struggled with numerous lockups. I get the feeling that Daniel Ricciardo might be a little less disappointed with where he ended up after watching McLaren's abysmal performance. Although the MCL 60 looked quite terrible for all 3 days of testing, I do think that Lando Norris has immense talent and the McLaren team has plenty of funding, both of which will see them around the 6th to 7th area of the mid-pack, a big step down from last year.
Sorry about that.
Shut up. It's enough now. This is gone. It's enough.
With the Steiner ship seeking upgrades and Nico Hülkenberg making his 29th return to F1, Haas seemed to be in a bit better shape this time around. The first day was a little rough, with both drivers saying that the VF23 felt a little difficult to drive. K-Mag had a few big lockups, and the rear end of the car seemed to get loose very easily. Although there were some early issues, they seemed to be sorted out for days 2 and 3 as both drivers found their way up the timesheets. Haas seems to have a bit more funding available this year, an important thing considering that they did not even hit the cost cap last year, and Mick Schumacher's repeated crashing only worsened this issue. With two very experienced drivers, and a design closely resembling the very fast Ferrari, I think Haas will be contending with McLaren to round out the midfield, a sentence that I would have never imagined saying just a week ago.
Oh no, I just hit a groundhog.
With Latifi gone and Williams finishing dead last in the previous season and being allotted the most wind tunnel testing time, they seem to have gotten a good step forward and be the source of numerous surprises this year. The FW45 had little issue with reliability and showed an improvement in both straight line speed and mid-corner stability. Logan Sargent impressed thoroughly on his debut, putting in a session high of 154 laps on day 2 and holding up well, showing great endurance. Both drivers found themselves around the middle of the group in terms of pace, something that was almost never seen last year, and I still think it's going to take a bit of luck or another insane Alex Albon 60-lap stint to pull out a ton of points, but Williams seems to be looking up from here, and although I don't think that they will be a mid-pack contender, I am hard-pressed to see them finishing last again.
My name is Yuki Tsunoda. I swear quite a lot.
At the very bottom of the pack, I have Alphatauri and their new AT04. Rookie Nick De Vries impressed with a P4 lap time on day 2, but his testing carried into day 3 where teams show a pace much closer to their actual potential. The AT04 fell off pretty badly. The car seems to show little improvement over last season, and I think that this relatively unexperienced driver duo will definitely have their work cut out for them. Although the car seems a little bit better than last year and both drivers expressed content with its performance, I don't believe the step that they took was as big as that of other teams, and as a result, I think that they will find it hard to escape the back of the pack. That pretty much wraps up my 2023 Formula One season predictions, with the most notable movements seeming to come from Aston Martin and McLaren. It seems the midfield performance will really tighten up this year, with many teams being hard to decide placement for, which would really be a great thing for the sport, as last season it became all too predictable. I believe we are in for a pretty good season, and I want to hear what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you enjoyed my 2023 F1 season predictions, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more car enthusiast and racing content. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.